Thank you, Professor William Frankie and Professor Brown. It's very nice to be here to have a chance to present them thinking about Frankie's book. And as a matter of fact, I'm sorry that I haven't accomplished the paper. I still work on that last night. So now I just bring some notes here. I decided to bring some notes here and to share this idea for my understanding of the main theme developed in William's book. It's a wonderful book, and I learned a lot from it. But I'm not going to give real comments on the book, but I'm going to talk about the issue. I think the main issue deals in the book is the nothingness, uncertainty, and human finitude. And I totally agree with actually the Carmen McGreek and the Moyne College. He commented on Frankie's book. So Apophatic language and negative theology have been accused of meanness, nihilism, and even ill-concealed ontologies in this lovely and surprising book, William Frankie. Not only that they undoes these criticism, but shows that apophasis underlines and strongly grounds all language and thought, even of those very discourse that most figures rejected. I fully agree with that. I think that shows us of this and the way how to deal with this. These two topics are actually the two parts of the book, and also deal with this. I will say how to say the unsayable. And but my background will lead me to approach this issue probably from perspective of the Chinese philosophy, and also the philosophy developed by Heidegger on the nothingness, which actually I struggled with that many times, a long time. But this time I try to figure out, I try to organize what I'm thinking and use this chance to present and try to learn from my colleagues from Cal and other universities. Okay, so next, what is the nothingness? I will say throughout all the major culture in the world, and no concept is so puzzling, but also so important than that of nothingness for us human beings. That's what I'm feeling of that. And as for important, I will say not only the Western philosophy, but also Chinese philosophy, also let's say Indian philosophy. And this reminds me about the story of Persian Russell. And the story says that one day he gave a talk to an Indian group, communities. And his talk started with a sentence that the greatest contribution of the Indian to the whole world is zero. Okay, so then you see this zero actually, of course that's the greatest contribution of the Indian culture to the whole world, but this zero indicates nothingness, but this nothingness is a meaningful nothingness. Right? Yeah. So, but when we talk about the concept, the very conception of nothing, I would say there are three perspectives we could think of. One is the nothing, I say that existential understanding of nothing as privation or absence. And the second, I think, is a logical and epistemological understanding of nothing as philosophers already talk very much about it. And third one I call the ontological understanding of nothing as being, of nothing as nothingness. So I think most people, when they are talking about the very conception of nothing, they focus either on the first part of perspective or the second one. And to my reading, I would say the Eastern way of talking about the nothingness, they focus very much on the first one, talking about nothingness as privation, as an absence. And when Western people start from Plato, through Kant, to today's even coming up Freud, Wittgenstein, we talk very much about nothing as negation. Yeah. So when we talk about the nothingness, we tend to talk from this logical and linguistical way of saying these things. And another perspective, which I'm going to focus very much more, actually is a Heideggerian way, this ontological understanding of nothing as the grounding, or the Heidegger called the Abgrund. Yeah. And on the one hand, it's a Grund, but on the other hand, it's Abgrund. Yeah. So then that's the way, how do we deal with this nothingness? And I think from Heidegger's perspective, or even Lao Tzu, I'm going to talk about that later, and their way just cross over, and they try to make the talking about nothing possible. How that be possible? Yeah. So in what way it is impossible, in what way it is possible? I think that's before I'm talking, I want to say that there are three ways when we see all of this. And next I'm going to show the Chinese, the language about nothing, and to see how these Chinese words will fit these three conceptions of nothingness, or nothing. All this, and then talk about my understanding of Kant. For example, Kant, in his Critique of Pure Reason, he mentioned there's four types of the nothing as the empty concept without object, or the empty object of a concept, or empty intuition without object, and empty object without concept. These four types of nothing. I guess it's what I think is from this epistemological and the way of seeing the nothing as a negation, as a limitation of human knowledge and language. Let's turn to the Chinese way. In Chinese, we know nothing we call the wu. Let's say in Chinese, in Putonghua, in Mandarin now we have four tongues. So that's if you see the alphabet, you cannot make a distinction between all these wus. But in Chinese, we get the wu. The second one is also pronounced as wu. Third one, that's a nothing, or nothingness. The third one we call the dancing, wu. That's third tongue. Okay. And the fourth one, you can see wu, that means shaman. Yeah. And another one is also wu. That means is we have a ground, we have the land full of the grasses or weeds, and then they kill the possibility of growing of other plants. We call wu. And also wang means disappearing. Yeah. And that's another type of wu. And the other wu, and also wu, and the fei, and the bu, that means the Chinese characters for negation. Yeah, for example, like bu, usually we say it's a negation of, according to the linguistic studies of the ancient Chinese language, the bu means a negation of a sentence, of doing things. For example, are you going to go to the lunch with us today, we say bu. That's this action, this the sentence with negation. And also, fei means it's a negation for a term. For example, the very famous the saying from the school of name, the white horse is not a horse. So we call 白马, 飞马. The 飞 is a negation of the property of a term or of a thing. Okay. So if we summarize all these different words for Chinese to say about wu, you may say that some of those just means it's absence, it's not yet, or already gone. Okay, that's in the form of, I call it existential form of existence. Yeah. Another part, some parts may be called as the, in Chinese logic, the negation of a sentence or of a property of a substance. And also, when we say wu as a substance, for example, like in Wang Bi's philosophy, that's about 2,000 years ago, he is a very famous commentator of Lao Tzu. He tried to give a metaphysical interpretation of Lao Tzu, the wu as a substance. Yeah. So that's he developed the whole theory or philosophy of wu. Yeah, so you can, in that way you can see these three types of wu in Chinese philosophy. And if I use Taoism as example, and also like Lao Tzu, in the very famous first chapter of Lao Tzu. Yeah. And you can see when Lao Tzu tried to pair this Tao and being Tao, nameless and being named, origin and mother, mystery plus mystery, all this indicates this nothingness, this wu as a very grounding of all things, or myriad things of the universe. And that's the wu. And because of limitation of time, I just go very quickly about this. For example, in Lao Tzu, you can see all these related to wu. No name, wu ming. Doing nothing, wu wei. No mind, wu xin. No desire, no attachment. Not saying, not acting, not competing. All this related to Lao Tzu's philosophy of wu. Yeah. So you can see that. That's what I try to say, that in Chinese understanding or Chinese tradition of understanding of nothingness is more close to, or related closely to the existential, I would say, the beings as absence and beings. And also, we may find that, for example, in one of my own, I wrote a paper about Lao Tzu's conception of non-action. Yes, in that paper, I try to make distinction between three kinds of, or three meanings of Lao Tzu's non-action, or wu wei. Yeah, so that also shows something like understanding of wu in Lao Tzu. For example, among these three meanings, the simplest one is we call the literary interpretation of name as doing nothing, which can be seen in the concept of wu shi, that means having no activity. That's the first meaning. Let's see the second meaning. Compared with the first focus on either doing something or doing nothing, of course, Lao Tzu will focus on this, doing nothing. And the second interpretation of wu wei emphasizes not having intentions or desire over having intentions and desire for agent in doing things. So the distinction is not between doing things or not doing things, but doing things with desire or not with desire. That's what we call wu wei. And the third meaning, you can see this wu wei. And the third interpretation of the term, wu wei is seen as action that does not force, but rather yields. It strongly recommends passive or soft approaches rather than aggressive or strong action. So that's related to Lao Tzu's practice philosophy. That the wu means an attitude of yielding, not force doing things. So that's, if you, go through all these Taoist texts, you may find that all these discussion of Wu. Another very famous story from Zhuangzi, you can see this, his description of Wu. Yeah, for Zhuangzi text, you may see that that's a very famous story of the Duke Huan of Qi-Huan-Gong and the wheelmaker Bian, Wen Bian. So one day, Duke Huan was sitting in the upper part of the palace reading, while below Bian is the wheelmaker was at work carving wheels. Seeing Duke Yuan so presently immersed in his reading, the wheelmaker approached the Duke to ask what he was reading and what about it so fascinating him. So Duke Yuan replied that he read the words of sage, and Bian asked, "Is the sage still among us?" When the Duke responded that the sage has already passed away, and when the wheelmaker rather imprudently told him, "Your Highness, what you read is filled with no more than dregs of the ancients." So the Duke Huan, being quite mad, and demanded the wheel to explain himself on pain of death. There, the Zhuangzi speaks to us through the wheelmaker Bian, telling us, I observed this principle in my own work. When carving wheels, then if one's movements are too sluggish and the work is easy and the wheel will be loose. And rushed it difficult for the part to do not fit. When neither too slow nor too fast, one's hand performs what is imprinted in the heart. Yeah. This balance cannot be converted through the speech as within a state. So the whole story says that what you're saying cannot, it's just like a dregs of the ancients. It cannot sayable of that. Another very famous story, okay, to read all this. Okay, that's very funny. Called the emperor of the South Sea was Shu. That's a fast coming. And the emperor of the North Sea was Hu. And fast leaving. Emperor of the center was Huntun, the chaos. Okay. The Shu and the Hu met from time to time in the land of Huntun, and Hu treated them very generously. Shu and Hu were discussing how to repay Huntun bounty. All men have 7 holes through which they look, listen, eat, dress, but Huntun alone does not have any. Let's try to boring them for him. Every day they bored 1 hole, and on the 7th day, Huntun died. Yeah, let's also talk about unsayable. Yeah. So, okay, let's see this. That's about, if we make a distinction between different kinds of the Wu in the Chinese text, in the Western text, we can see all these different kinds of things. But the main issue, I would say, is related to what William thought is unsayability. So unsayability might be seen as a kind of character of nothingness, and it belongs to the negation of discursive saying and conceptual thinking. Or should we say, we should say, nothingness is by its nature apophatic. Yeah. So then it's by its nature it's apophatic. It can say it's a negation. Yeah. And let's see. And then our question will be, how is the thinking or saying about nothing possible? To me, there are 4 possibilities. First, there is no such thing as nothingness at all. For example, like the Karnak, and it's a nonsense. It's no such kind of thing. The second, I will say, even if there is nothingness, we must remain silent on it, because it's out of our limits of a conceptual thinking and the meaningful saying. For example, like Kant, we mentioned we're talking about 4 types of the nothing. And Wittgenstein is very famous on saying. Yeah. Or, let's see, we could find another way. We may call it the poetic or mystical way. Or like Hegel called dialectical way, to say something which we cannot say it through the rational conceptual thinking and thinking. The fourth one I call that we should change the very conceptions of our grounding, of our traditional epistemological understanding of to think, to say, or truth, and knowledge, etc. I think that's what Heidegger said. Das Nichts, Nichtet. When you use this kind of the things. But the question is, how this das Nichts, this nothingness, nothing. Okay, so that's the question. Yeah. Okay, I quoted a Heidegger saying from the Gesamtausgabe, volume 15, to say. Yeah, the Wesen of the essence of the nothing, yeah, besteht in der Angewandtheit vom Seiende. So I guess many of you can read German, right? So then you can see that's what Heidegger talked about, das Nichts, Nichtet. Yeah, it's not like I think the main thing here is that they change the way. It's not like a subject, like a speaker, try to speak of something which we call nothingness. You cannot think of that. You cannot say that. But we may change the way, the different direction of it. What we're seeing is only responding to how the way, or the Tao, how the nothingness, nothing itself. Well, in that way, nothingness and being are almost the same. Okay. And in that way, I will say, for example, when Heidegger talked about in section 7 of Being and Time, when he talked about the essential structure of discourse, Rede. Yeah, he said that we have this, for the discourse or the Rede, we should have something we call the let's see, what one is talking about, that's wovon in their Rede, in one's discourse. So in discourse, so far as it's general, what he said, what geredet is drawn from what the talk is about, so that discourse communicate in what it says. So here he make the levels of saying. One is when we say about in German word about redet or discourse. One is redet, right? It's wovon in der Rede. What geredet is. Second is worüber geredet. That's what talking is about. And the third is das Gesagte. Das Gesagte. It's saying out. So when we see this, when we the talking about the saying in the ordinary sense, usually we say on the third level. Another example you can find that in the chapter or section 33 of Being and Time, when Heidegger talk about the assertion, the Aussage. Also there are 3 levels for the structure. One is he calls the Aussage, another is Prädikation, or the predication. The third is Mitteilung, or communication. So when we talk about the language, we'll talk about to say, we usually on the level of the communication, or on the level of predication and the communication. But the unsayable is this Aussage, or pointing out. So in that way is this
it's a derivative way of being shows itself, manifests itself. So Heidegger will say that that's a way, if we put it negatively, is the nothingness, Nichtet. Nothingness negate itself. If we use das Licht in a verb, Nichtet. Okay, so I know I run out of time.
Yeah,
okay.
A little bit.
So that's what I want to focus. Okay. So here I will say, I give this. The key here is how to understand the essence of human being as a finite being. Our human finitude does not consist in our inability to get into the absolute nothingness, as in Kant's words, a transcendental object equals X, but in our limited nature in listening and fully responding to calls from nothingness, or being as upgrown in our living and being. So I think that's, let me see. Okay, let me finish this here. Though Heidegger belongs to the group of thinkers who choose to deconstruct the traditional use of very conception of to see and to think, he questions the very ground of Western metaphysics thinking and being and the nothingness. But Lao-Tzu, on the other hand, did not have such kind of conception at all. So therefore, their way to approach or encounter nothingness happened to be crossing over each other. So one is, Heidegger set up this as a task to deconstruct the traditional understanding of the thinking and the saying. But in the Chinese tradition, we don't have such kind of the strong or hard the tradition yet. In that way, you can see that the Tao can be seen as Tao, or the being is the coming, or manifesting itself, or does nothing, the Nichtet, or nothing, nothing itself, we may say that. Okay. So at the end of it, I will say, quote Lao-Tzu's chapter 25, when I'll talk about the four greatness, and which can be seen as parallel to the Heidegger's Das der Field. Yeah. So that's four. That means we human being is great. And also we have the heaven, we have the earth, we have the Tao as a great. So here I try to translate the great